2015, an elite DFS Army Commando unit formed to bring high-level DFS strategy to the masses. Today, hated by DFS sharks and lineup sellers alike, they continue their quest to turn Joe into DFS pros.
Welcome back, everybody, to another DFS Army season-long fantasy football bold calls podcast. My name is Kevin. I'm known as the Fantasy Football Geek. I've got season-long Says on the line with me, and today we are going to be breaking down a experts league draft and just kind of take a deeper dive into draft season. How you doing, season-long Says?
How are you, my friend?
All right. And so over the past couple weeks, we've been talking about best ball leagues. We've been talking about position groups and updates and the preseason and all the different effects that are going on. And this is going to be the first time where we're going to talk about real draft strategy, how drafts are going down, what to expect, and very importantly, tell us about this NFFC high-stakes draft that you were just in.
So the NFFC is the best, in my opinion, the best national high-stakes draft contest that's out there right now. This specific contest is called the RotoWire Online Championship, and even a little bit more about it is one of the founders of RotoWire, his name is Chris Liss, and he every year puts out a challenge to listeners, to other industry experts, to join him in a 12-team league where you pay $350 to join, and it's a 12-team league where the top two teams qualify for an overall contest. So this is run like a typical 12-team league where it's PPR. You start one quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, one flex, non-QB flex, a tight end, defense and kicker. But what's also interesting is that it's a 10-man bench. There's no trading in this league. There is fab pickups and season-long management. And the other little quirk here is that in addition to getting to pick your draft slot, they do a lottery, that it is third-round reversal. And what that means is after we go 1 through 12 in the first round, 12 through 1 in the second round, we go 12 through 1 again in the third round, and then it reverts to a normal snake. So I drew the 6th priority and chose to have pick 11. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to not only have I believe there's about 15 first-round talents in the draft this year. I wanted to get 2 of those, plus I wanted to pick at the top of the third round.
Yeah, I like that third-round reversal concept. I really think it's levels the playing field a little bit, makes it fair. So it's something that I think would be cool to replicate in other leagues, down the road. You've told me a couple of different parameters that some of these leagues have come up with that I think are just really smart, and especially for big money leagues. And I'm looking at this draft board, and let's go through the top part of the draft. We've talked about our draft orders and whatnot, and I think that the beginning of this draft went pretty much according to script.
Well, if you just look at I'll just roll down quickly how the first round went. Pick 1 was Gurley, 2 was Bell, 3 was Elliott. Now here's where it got a little interesting. If you notice, pick 1.4 was Barkley, and then 5 was David Johnson. Do you think the Barkley love's a little too much? Is that pushing it a little too far, even being that Barkley is already with a sore hamstring? Wouldn't you take David Johnson ahead of him?
Hell yeah, I would take David Johnson well ahead of him, but you're going to get a Giants fan in there or something. It's not offensive to me. I would have David Johnson ahead of all those guys, number 2 overall. Right. But that's splitting hairs. But I'm okay with. I'm more looking at it as, all right, the 5 stud running backs off the board. Then you get your first wide receiver.
Well, that's what's interesting. It's like in a lot of the conversations you and I have had, it's like, okay, when do you take Antonio Brown? And that decision point in this draft was pick 6. So after those 5 running backs were off, Brown went 6, and then Kamara, Hunt, then Hopkins went, Melvin Gordon went 10th, and then I was on the clock at 11. You and I had talked about this in a previous podcast. What do you? I ended up going Fournette here, and I'm passing on Beckham. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the move. I wouldn't have minded though Beckham there because you knew at that spot that you were going to get one of Cook or McCaffrey on the comeback. So to me, having a super stud kind of wide receiver anchor up there would have been fine as well.
Well, here's what I was worried about. I was worried about if I took Beckham, that the guy on the 12, the manager on the 12-13 turn might have gone Cook McCaffrey. McCaffrey, as you know, we talked about him. I was targeting him at pick 2.2, but the night before this draft, he had that 171-yard game, including a 70-yard touchdown. So I was a little nervous that he would take him.
Could have happened. Your draft would have been pretty messed up, or it would have gone a really different way had that been the case. So I mean, it was a safe play. If I'm looking at though, I would have been okay with a Beckham. I like the way on this draft, and I think it's very indicative where you see wide receiver, then you see you're almost creating your tiers here in this first round with your top tier of stud wide, although I'd say the top 2 tiers of running backs in those first 5. Then
by the way, anyone who wants to follow along and look at the draft board while we're talking about this, I posted it on my Twitter at Alan Seslowsky, AlanSeslowsky. Geek, if you could post it on yours as well. This way, if someone's listening to the podcast, they might be able to follow the board along as well.
Absolutely. You know what? And we'll put it in the write-up, in the column underneath it on the website as this gets posted, so people will be able to see this. But yeah, so I mean, I would have been cool with Beckham, McCaffrey, or Beckham Cook here, but Fournette, McCaffrey, you start off with 2. So for your end, you start off with 2 studs. I see the guy in front of you, he starts off with Beckham Jones, so he ends up with the double stud wide receiver look. And
the guy in the end cap committed himself to the 0 running back at that point. He was just taking best player available, which he pinned as the wide receivers. He took Beckham and Julio.
Yeah, and his draft winds up going very interesting. And actually, I'm going to just jump into his draft real quick because this is what happens if you do this. I've talked about this. I've had some best balls where I've said, fuck it, I'm going to go 2 studs. You're chasing running backs for the rest of your draft. And this guy actually then takes T.Y. Hilton, so he went all in on 0 RB at that point.
Right. So keep in mind, though, for those following along on the draft board, T.Y. Hilton was not the last pick of the 3rd round. He was the first pick of the 3rd round because of the 3rd round reversal.
Yeah, so he jumps all in. He now T.Y. Hilton, Jones, and Beckham. All right, great combo, high scoring. His next 5 picks in a row are Dion Lewis, Tariq Cohen, Tevin Coleman, Kerryon Johnson, Chris Carson. So he basically was forced to just go nonstop. I don't love his running back position.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about? So Mike Evans went pick 2.12. He was the last pick of the 2nd round. T.Y. Hilton was the next pick. When that happened, when Evans went right before T.Y., the room went crazy. Everyone was like, "Whoa!" It was a big shocker. Like everyone thought for sure Hilton should have been ranked over Evans. But what happened was Chris Liss, who was the guest of honor, one of the main experts in this draft, said that T.Y. Hilton's shoulder injury scared him off him enough just to take Mike Evans. What's your take on that?
Nothing bothered him about Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing to Mike Evans or the fact that Jameis Winston seems to suck now. I mean, yeah, I'm okay with – listen, Evans has been much more of a target machine. T.Y. Hilton, if he's worried about T.Y., he should be worried about Andrew Luck's shoulder with T.Y. Hilton more than anything else because Luck is coming off of a 3-year absence from the NFL. I mean, are you serious? Like, how much can you really rely on that? So, yeah, I like Hilton.
Luck's look good in the preseason.
I get it. I don't even want to hear it. He's got a shoulder issue that caused him to not play football for the better part of 3 years.
Yep. Now, the other thing that was interesting to me, and we did this draft last night on the 18th of August. Today is the 19th. It's the morning time. A couple things that really were interesting to me in the second round was that Stephon Diggs went at pick 2.10 in the second round. How do you feel about Diggs going ahead of guys like Evans and Hilton and Tyreek Hill, Doug Baldwin?
How about Thielen also ahead of Diggs? So I mean, it went Thielen, Diggs, 1, 2. It's funny because I have those two ranked exactly together as the same person also.
Right. Which one would you take? Which one do you think is a better pick? Is it because they are going back to back at this point, Thielen and Diggs, whether it's a second or third round? Which one do you have ranked higher?
It's so tough because I think Diggs is probably the more explosive player, but he's had some injury concerns the last couple of years. Nothing major, but like soft tissue type injuries. Thielen hasn't had that, but man, if I have a hard time. I have Diggs just ahead of Thielen, but I mean, It's a hair split. It's a hair split.
It is a hair split, but you hit on something that I was thinking about last night when I was staring at this draft. And the reason I have Thielen ahead of him, and I certainly respect the ceiling call of Diggs ahead of Thielen, but I think that Thielen plays better hurt. And what I mean is that Thielen ended up on the injury report a couple times, and his production really wasn't that affected. Even if Stephon Diggs is not out of the lineup, if he is on the injury report during the week, I look back at his game logs and he disappears. So again, it's an anecdotal observation, but I think that Thielen plays better when he's dinged up.
Do you want to hear a crazy stat that I heard about these two guys and an argument for Thielen? So, did you know that Stephon Diggs is the wide receiver in the league with the biggest drop-off in production as it's correlated to the quality of his opposing cornerback? So
he gets affected as the competition gets higher. He's able to really dispose of the weaker guys, have good matchups with the middling guys, but the top guys he has some problems with. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I have a theory as to why, but the statistics show. I'm not saying he has a problem with anything. The statistics show that when Stephon Diggs goes up against an elite cornerback, the drop-off in his production is more dramatic than any other player in the National Football League. He's number one.
Wow.
So the question,
what's the theory?
My theory is because Adam Thielen's really good too, and so the problem with Diggs is he plays that outside wide receiver. He's even though these are 1A.1 type wide receivers, Diggs is treated as the WR1. So when they're going up against Darius Slay types, okay, the Jalen Ramsey types, he's covering Diggs. So whenever they face an opposing team, that opposing team's best corner is put on Diggs. If that guy's really good, they just throw it to Thielen in that game because Thielen's also really good. So the end result is Diggs might be a slightly more talented overall wide receiver, but because he gets the WR1 treatment and because they're really not differentiating between these two guys, I think that's what causes Diggs to have some of those dud games. They just go away from him.
That's actually a great observation that because Thielen's not really a number two. He's really like a coast number one, that they're not going to force him the ball. Maybe that'll change with a new QB, Kirk Cousins there, and with a new offensive coordinator, but that makes a lot of sense. When you have two really great guys, why force it into one? The only one that deserves a force feeding is Antonio Brown and DeAndre Hopkins.
No, I mean, listen, there are guys. I mean, Evans is going to be force fed the ball too. Will they be able to get him to him? I don't know, but there are number one guys who are head and shoulders above anybody else on their team. And like Antonio Brown, can't nobody stop him, right? But apparently with Diggs, they're like, fuck it, let's throw to Thielen.
All right. Well, a couple other things that happened in this draft that I thought were out of the normal or just that punch out to me. I wanted your opinion. The tight ends, the elite tight ends, went later than expected. Gronkowski went at pick 4. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He went at 4.7, and Kelsey went at 4.9, and then Ertz didn't go until the end of the 5th round. What is your take? Why do you think that this draft room was pushed those tight ends down a little bit? Normally they're going in the late second and then no later than the late third.
It's funny. It seems like the whole room was in on this whole idea of just getting depth elsewhere, and just they waited and waited, and it almost looks like no one wanted to pull the trigger. I'll tell you what I think happened. No one wanted to pull the trigger on Gronk. I think expert drafters at this point, or better drafted, and I'm not calling all these people experts because I see some moves here, but I'm going to call sharper drafters are realizing that Gronk has not delivered. He gets hurt a lot. He hasn't delivered, league-winning numbers in quite a few years, right? He has his big games, but he's down a lot. He hasn't been worth that high second pick where he's been going. So what I think was it was a game of chicken. Everybody's waiting because if I like Kelsey, I'm like, fuck it, Gronk is still there. I'm not taking Kelsey now. I don't want to jump Gronk. He's the number one rank. Let somebody else take Gronk first, and then I'll see what's up. And I think it was just a high stakes game of chicken with who will be the first to take Gronk. And it does look like that's kind of how it went because very quickly some lunatic then takes Hoyce Freeman in the 4th round, and then Kelsey next pick. So you see Gronko, and then boom, boom, Kelsey, and then a couple picks later, probably too many picks later, Zach Ertz.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. You mentioned Freeman. We talked about him on the last podcast. I told you he was going to move on up. Now, this league, again, is a league of experienced players. Some experts in it, just someone liked him. And I think that's going to happen in our real draft too. Maybe in your home leagues it won't happen. In the home leagues, I still think he'll go 5th round or later, maybe even 7th round. But in these leagues and especially Freeman had a pretty good couple preseason games, it moved him firmly in the 4th. And that specific drafter, Portugal the Man, if you're following along, he went with Kareem Hunt the 1st, took 2 wide receivers. So he probably felt and saw the running backs drying up a little bit. So that's probably why he jumped. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because when we talked about, I almost thought about Kelsey in the 3rd round, where I had the 2nd pick in the 3rd round. I ended up going wide receiver there. I took his teammate Tyreek Hill, who's looked awesome so far in the preseason. I know there's a lot of pushback, and Tyreek Hill is a polarizing player. People say he's too volatile. I think this year his target share is going to go up a little bit, and he can just run past anybody. Everybody knows why you draft Tyreek Hill. He's a league-winning type of pick if it pans out like it did last year. So I have Kelsey in a PPR ranked higher than Gronk, not just because of health reasons, because of the receptions. Would you blink or look twice if somebody took Kelsey ahead of Gronk, or do you think that that's totally off the rails?
No, I've done that. So, I've done that in best ball leagues also. I think they're so close. Kelsey is delivering stud numbers. There's this whole narrative about how younger quarterbacks like to, lean on the tight end position. So with Mahomes in there, I could see that. I could see Kelsey having a great year. He's been great, and he's a stud. He's a alpha dog for his team. He's a wily veteran. You're not going to ignore him. Everything about Kelsey looks good this year.
Okay. All right. Well, then I have more questions for you, if you don't mind me asking, because I respect your take on these drafts. So we always talk about, and I think it's pretty much settled law that you wait on QB. If in the middle round, early middle rounds, 4th, 5th, 6th, if there's just nobody you like on the board, it's not egregious to pivot to Aaron Rodgers, but we kind of agree that's sort of it. Rodgers went in early 4th in this draft. Watson was the 2nd QB off the board. He went late 6th, which again proves why you wait. And then I took Brady in the 2nd pick of the 7th round as 3rd QB off the board. And then what was really surprising, I'm happy to see it, was Garoppolo was the 4th QB taken ahead of Russell Wilson, ahead of Drew Brees, and ahead of Carson Wentz. He went at 8.2. Give me your feel and your feedback on where the QBs went on your board. They're in pink, and also specifically Garoppolo being the 4th QB.
I don't mind Garoppolo at all. I have him ranked 5th overall on my rankings. So this is more like what I see the quarterback position as. I'm a little surprised to see it being acted out in reality, because part of my whole approach this season has been that all the suckers think, that let everybody else grab, the Bradys who you have here, and some of these other guys, because the Wilsons, and the Breeze and Wentz, and Newton. Look how far Newton went in your draft, which is crazy. But my assumption has always been I can just wait for all those guys to drop, and then I'll take Garoppolo, later. So kind of like what I was talking about with the Gronk thing, where you're like the game of chicken. So I'm just, the way I approach these positions a lot of times in each draft is I'm just waiting for the run to start. And if I know I'm into, who I think will go number 7 in the run, and, the run's going 3, 4, 5, I'm looking, all right, where am I? Okay, can I take him now? Can I wait another round? It's interesting how the run on quarterbacks. Now, I'm started in this particular league, and definitely that Garoppolo.
Round 8 is where the run starts.
I'm just trying to see who you could have gotten had you not taken Tom Brady there. Let's say you take.
If I didn't take Brady, it would have the next time I would have had an opportunity to pick would have been in the late 8th, and I could have gotten Cam Newton there. But I'll tell you why. And sure, Cam Newton's great.
Or Kirk Cousins.
Right. Yeah. No, there was definitely options there, and I think that this draft.
Or Andrew Luck.
Yeah. When people look at this draft, I think it's the perfect lesson on how to wait for QB. Now, let me tell you what my theory was when taking Tom Brady, because I'm not an early QB guy, and I don't think Brady's even going to put up historic numbers. I just think he's going to be he has an a week 11 bye. I'm never going to worry about matchups. I'm just going to put him in. So in this particular league, it's not like your home league where the 50% of the league, the top 6 teams make the playoffs, and then you just kind of go. All right. There's a little bit of a DFS element in a sense where only the top 2 teams make the playoffs. So I think a stacking element creeped into my brain, whether that was right or wrong. And with you and I both agree, Chris Hogan has a chance to be a top 12 wide receiver, especially, if he can avoid injury. And I thought the Brady Hogan stack might give me a chance, because to finish third does you no good. You need to have that sort of upside. And Brady, I mean, you wouldn't be shocked if Brady Hogan are one of the top wide receiver QB combos. So that was my thinking, and I also was targeting Trey Burton on the next roll around.
I think it's almost more of that. For me personally, I would not have taken Brady there. That would not have been. I'm just not going to be someone who has Brady on my team. I'm just going to wait.
My wife, who's a fantasy football connoisseur too, she panned me for the pick. She hated Brady there as well.
Yeah, I hate the pick. When I saw your draft, I said, on principle, I just don't want this third quarterback. There were other players. Now, it's funny because the players who went around Brady, I don't like so much. I mean, Michael Crabtree, good depth piece. I would have liked him. Rex Burkhead, in the area. Greg Olsen was available. There were players that were Isaiah Crowell. Yes.
So you're talking about, just to be clear for the people listening, I took Brady at 7.2. The 7.3 was Crabtree. Hyde was at 7.4. I considered taking Hyde there just to stack up on running backs. I've become a little.
I would not have liked Hyde either. I think Hyde is a terrible play this season and a terrible pick. But
I think that he is the starting running back there. Nick Chubb has come. He's had a tough showing in the preseason, and I told you we love Nick Chubb if he is the player he was before the big injury in school, but I don't think that's going to happen so quickly. I think Carlos Hyde is the kind of guy, especially if you get him as your 4th running back in drafts, if he has a couple good weeks and he's sitting on your bench, there's going to be a team that's running back starved that he could be a good trade candidate. I'm not even drafting Nick Chubb until the very later rounds at this point. I think he's more of a handcuff even than a co-start.
Yeah, I agree, but I mean, Hyde is what I think is going to end up happening is already Cleveland, Crowell is the perfect example of what that offense did before. With Duke Johnson Jr. in there, you're never going to get a running back who is going to deliver the type of numbers that we want. Period.
Yeah, but you're talking about in the 7th round a starting running back. Those are hard.
Yeah, this is true. It's a depth piece. But I would have taken Rex Burkhead. I would have taken Crowell. There were other guys I would have taken there. Crabtree. As I continue through, Chris Carson was around. There were some pretty okay names at that point that I would have waited. right? Just
Carson
get one. How about Robbie Anderson? You could add Robbie Anderson. The point is, there were pieces for me. Both the Lynch and the Brady picks on your draft are picks that I would have done differently, but that's why we have different people draft them. I don't always win.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I posted the draft board on my Facebook page. I posted it on Twitter, and it seems that the most polarizing pick that I made was the Lynch pick at the end of the 6th round. The people, Lynch has looked really good. He is the starter. I believe that he's my 3rd running back. At that point, I really needed another running back. When you look at the board, you'll see the running backs were flying off the board. So I took Lynch ahead of other running backs like Tevin Coleman, Kerryon Johnson, Hyde, Burkhead, Crowell. I know that you prefer Burkhead and Crowell. I think Lynch, I was looking for floor at that point. I'm not so sure Rex Burkhead has the floor with James White looking great and Sony Michel there, and now Jeremy Hill in the mix. So Rex Burkhead, I just don't think will have predictable floor-based starting weeks. I think the floor is literally 0 in some weeks. Crowell, I probably would have picked him there. It felt a little early, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, now ADP doesn't matter. It's who's on your roster. I was a little nervous about he was coming out of a concussion. I just felt Marshawn Lynch was a safe bet for 15 carries a week, and he's probably the favorite for when they get on the goal line as well. As my 3rd running back, if one of my guys go down.
As long as he plays and he gives a shit. Marshawn Lynch sometimes goes into I don't give a shit mode.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you some interesting, just looking at the overall draft board here, some interesting different things. So I thought just across the board, getting down into those late rounds, I mean, it gets really down and dirty with some depth that most people don't need to even think about. But
what round? What round are you looking at? Like where?
Well, once you get down, I'm jumping back up to the top because I'm fascinated by where some of these running backs drop to and who goes next to who. So, for example, Kenyon Drake, who is somebody I like a lot this year.
He went exactly in the middle of the 3rd round. He went at 3.6.
But right next to Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard seemed to drop further than what I would have expected, as did Jerick McKinnon. All 3 of these guys in the 3rd round, and I think they're all great running backs this year.
Well, just to give for anyone just listening along, McKinnon went at 3.3. He's been in the 2nd round up in, for pretty much all of the last few weeks. Howard went at 3.6, and then Drake went immediately after at 3.7. I think Howard fell in this format because of the PPR aspect, and I think that you and I have been talking about Tariq Cohen for a long time, and I think he's a real threat to be on the field in the spread offense. But Jordan Howard's a rock solid pick in the 3rd round. I mean, you're happy to have him.
Yeah, I'm looking at Tariq Cohen as a wide receiver for his team, a Tyreek Hill type gadget player. I don't know that harms Howard any more than Tyreek Hill harms Kareem Hunt on his team. But and the interesting debate I've been having, and this this is a live kind of I'm not saying it settles the debate, but there have been basically between Collins, for me, Drake, and even LaShawn McCoy, although McCoy's not on my debate at all, but between Collins and Drake, I've kind of been putting Collins maybe one spot ahead of Drake. And it's interesting to see here that Collins went, I'm going to, 2 running backs later, but quite a few picks later, but 2 running backs later. Whereas I can make an argument for Collins ahead of Kenyon Drake. I think the consensus ranking is that.
I have him like that. I mean, listen, once you get out of the first couple rounds, or even in this draft, in the first couple rounds, ADP within a spot or 2 is just personal preference. Who knows if this guy was a Miami Dolphins fan, or maybe he just believes that PPR upside is good. We know that Alex Collins is going to be the hammer. He can catch the ball. It's not like Alex Collins is a zero.
I think he's going to. I think he's going to do it all for his team. I don't see him coming off the. Who they bringing in? Buck Allen. Come on. A couple other terrible picks in this league. I mean, or at least I'm going to call them really surprising ones. And I don't know what you felt about it, but I'm offended by somebody in an expert league who takes Aaron Rodgers in the 4th round. If you're an expert, you shouldn't do that.
I mean, I'm seeing it happen more and more.
Well, that's that same maniac that took Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams back to back. So I mean, this guy, I'm wiping his whole board should be removed from this because it's so ridiculous.
I mean, could he be a Packers fan? He went Rodgers.
Yeah, you know what? That's what it is. But that's not if you're a fantasy football person, you need to check your fandom at the door. Another concerning move here.
The good news is, though, if you pay your $350 entry fee, you get to do what you want.
That is true. Like this guy has Sterling Shepard. I mean, just some of the picks are confusing.
Yeah,
but,
I agree. I agree there.
And I like Sterling Shepard, but too, and George Kittle very late, good pick. Another offensive pick here is Brandon Cooks in the 4th round. For the Rams, for Team Riggs here, who started out with David Johnson, got lucky, Adam Thielen, good start, Amari Cooper, and then it all went bad. I mean, the fact that Brandon Cooks went off the board a full round before Zach Ertz offends me.
But wait a second. He got both players. This team you're talking about, who started David Johnson.
Yeah, he had incredible luck in terms of whatever players fell to him. He's got a very good team. But I mean, Brandon Cooks.
Cooks. Where are you comfortable taking Brandon Cooks?
6th round, 7th.
All right. Well, he's been routinely going in the 4th round, so I agree with you. I probably would, I would feel it would be a little bit reachy to take him in the 5th, but it wouldn't be crazy. And the 4th seems very early to me. But that you've done a bunch of these drafts at this point. You understand that's where he goes.
I know where he goes there, but I mean, guys, read my rankings, man. Brandon Cooks. Well, how is he different from Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp? They're going to be the same guy. There's a single quarterback who no one wants to draft until the 14th QB overall, and yet you could get Robert Woods in the 7th, Cooper Kupp in the 9th. Well, I don't even see where he went. I'm trying to, but my point is, don't take Cook in the 2nd round. That's in the 4th round. That's ridiculous. And Derrick Henry, there's just some players this year going at spots in the draft in the 4th round, like Derrick Henry. I don't get it. Deion Lewis and Derrick Henry in the 4th round, both guys are going to be good. Tennessee hasn't produced a quality running back in a very long time, but both of these guys are going to do it. Okay.
How many? Well, let's start with this. How many? It's a new regime there. They have one of the Tennessee. They have one of the best offensive lines, top 5 offensive line, right? How many carries do you think is give me a conservative projection for a number of carries for Derrick Henry?
He should average 12 carries a game. 12 to 14.
Okay, so let's just say 13 carries a game?
Yeah.
Okay, so if he gets 13 carries a game in 16 games, what you're saying is that he's going to have about 210 carries. Okay, well, that's a good conservative projection, right? 210. So if he gets 200,
virtually no receptions.
Right, well, let's just talk about his yardage totals for a second. Let's say he gets 3.7 yards a carry, which is not good. That's about 800 yards. It's about 775 yards. Okay. Now, yeah, you're right. If that's how it works out,
tack on, by the way, and I'll give you him getting the goal line carries. I will hand you for Derrick Henry 6 touchdowns.
Okay. Well, if he's a 775-yard 6-touchdown guy, then he does not belong there. He belongs late in the 7th round. But if for some reason Derrick Henry gets, let's say, 16 touches a game, right? And that would basically put him at about 256 for the season. And let's say he was a highly rated prospect, and he ends up with 4 yards a carry, which is about league average. Now you're talking about 1,025 yards. So if he's a 1,000-yard runner and gets 7 to 8 touchdowns, now you're talking about he belongs. But I see what you're saying. You're drafting him closer to the ceiling than you are to value.
I mean, his best case scenario is he returns 4th round value. Deion Lewis, the same thing. I mean, why wouldn't you just take Lamar Miller? Lamar Miller is pretty well guaranteed to get you all of those numbers that you just said. The ceiling for Derrick Henry is pretty much, if Miller's playing, that's his floor.
Right. Well, Miller goes his ADP is the 5th to 6th round, and that same player that took Derrick Henry, the same manager, he also got Lamar Miller.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not the point. The point is okay, Miller should have gone before Henry. Why is Henry going ahead of Lamar Miller? Lamar Miller, Henry's floor. Again, Deion Lewis is there. Miller doesn't have somebody snaking his receiving down work, passing down work. He didn't have some guy in there vulturing it. Derrick Henry has Deion Lewis to contend with. Deion Lewis is going to catch touchdowns. If you remember the way that the Tennessee team, now again, new regime in place, whatever, but the way that the Titans offense tended to generate touchdowns for the running back position were it was a very common they were tosses to DeMarco Murray. Like Murray would get receiving touchdowns. They were not pounding the rock up the middle. They would throw it, check downs to DeMarco Murray. That was a common way for them to score. Deion Lewis is going to get that work. So
right. Well,
for me, I don't know. This RBBC is a bit too much. I can't have the same team produce two running backs in the same round.
Right. You've been off Tennessee's running back since we've started having these conversations in the preseason. I think the thinking is, the conventional wisdom is that one of them is going to produce. So you take a shot on one. I mean, the thing that troubles me about Deion Lewis was he kind of was like a cast-off, like a little bit. I don't want to call him a scrub. He was always an athletic guy, but he didn't really do anything until he was in the Patriots system. I mean, look what we've seen James White do, including almost like basically was the Super Bowl MVP a couple years ago. Could Deion Lewis, not saying that he's not talented, but could it be that he was in this amazing New England system which made him produce, and then this year he'll just go back to being irrelevant? We don't know. The last topic, or before we wrap, I wanted to ask you about how the tight ends flew off the board. I know we talked about the elite guys, but I thought it was interesting here in this specific draft. After the big three went off, Greg Olsen was the fourth, Jimmy Graham was the fifth, Evan Ingram went at the end of the seventh round. He was the seventh, right? And then I took Trey Burton as the eighth tight end off the board, before Delaney, before Kyle Rudolph, and even David Njoku went off the board before Rudolph and Delaney Walker. I wanted your thoughts on Burton as a top 10 wide receiver, Njoku now in this specific draft going ahead of what were considered the safe guys, and the value on Evan Ingram at the end of the seventh round.
Or how about Njoku? All right, so Njoku is definitely a result of Hard Knocks, and if you're watching it, you see Njoku looks very impressive. He's quite a specimen. You learned about him, like he hasn't done anything. He's never had a quarterback to throw to him. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I do have concerns about. Are you saying, because am I reading this order correctly, that Ingram went before Jimmy Graham and Greg Olsen, or that was the other way?
No. So you could see on the left-hand side when you're looking at the draft board, the arrows point the way the draft goes.
Okay.
So
all right. That makes it okay. I get it now. All right. So you have your top three: Olsen, Graham, Ingram. That's pretty standard stuff. And you were the one who threw it out of whack by taking Trey Burton when you did, right?
I took Burton. I took Burton ahead of players that traditionally went ahead of him, like Delaney Walker, Kyle Rudolph.
Now I'm going to tell you this. I don't like Delaney Walker this year. He looked old last season and breaking down, and he's one of those guys that every time he went down, he looked like he wasn't going to get back up, and then he'd get back up, kind of limp a little bit, and he's just got that old man look to him. I like him as a person. He's awesome, but he's got that old man look to him on the field. My eyes showed me a guy. Now he continued to produce, but it's that slow to get up, that come out after every single tackle that tells me this guy's in breakdown mode. So I'm perfectly fine taking a young buck like Trey Burton. We'll see how he does in that Chicago offense. He's a prospect.
Did you watch the game last night, man?
I did not see the game.
Yeah, Trey Burton, he played for 1 quarter. He played actually a little bit less than 1 quarter. They targeted him 5 times. He caught 4 of them for 45 yards and scored a touchdown and looked just dominant. And that was in one quarter of play.
I remember, loading up on Trey Burton that week that I think Ertz was hurt, just having a huge result. So, I like Trey Burton. All good.
Yeah, Matt Nagy, who's the new head coach of the Bears, who was formerly the offensive coordinator of Kansas City, really liked Travis Kelce. He's the one that pushed Travis Kelce to elite status. I think we're going to see Trey Burton get that treatment. Whether he could do it or not, we'll see. But as when after your sure thing tight ends are off the board, I don't think there's a better, higher upside pick with some form of a floor than Trey Burton. So not just.
I don't have any. Yeah, I don't have. I mean, the your comparables are. I mean, he goes off the board, right? So realistically, I'm perfectly fine skipping Walker. Zach Rudolph is probably a surer.
Kyle Rudolph.
Kyle Rudolph is a little bit of a sure. I like Kyle Rudolph too, but we've seen a lot of years of Kyle Rudolph already. I like the fact that he's with Kirk Cousins now, a quarterback that likes to, target the tight end position quite liberally. So, traditionally tight ends with Kirk Cousins have done really well. So my bigger concern with Trey Burton is his quarterback situation, just like anybody on Chicago, where we think Trubisky's going to take a step forward. We think so, but I haven't seen it. Like, I've seen Zach Rudolph be pretty good. Or Kyle. I always say Zach Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph.
Who is that? Who is Zach Rudolph?
I don't know. I always say Zach. I don't know.
You try to say Zach Ertz?
You ever have like a mental thing where you see the last name that messes me up all the time.
So you have like a tight end tick, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's particularly with Rudolph. I say Zach Rudolph. I have the same thing going on.
All right.
Well,
you know what? You don't have to even correct yourself anymore.
Yeah, just let me say Zach. Let me just say it. And I have the same thing going on with Derek and David Carr. I still never know which one is the current one that's playing.
I guess we'll call the other tight end. We'll call him Kyle Ertz.
Yeah, there we go. Now, the other guy that I like a lot, if he's healthy, but we know he has health issues, is Jordan Reed. So I'm totally fine with the Trey Burton pick there. Fine with it.
Now,
and I like that it's different from your standard. I always like when it's different from your standard draft board. I think that's a good thing. So, I think that's a good thing anytime you're going away from the standard, how you're putting your stamp on your draft. And clearly you said you wanted Trey Burton.
Yeah, I was targeting him there.
That was a guy.
I mean, it's probably a little bit earlier. I probably maybe even could wait another round.
I tend to play it differently. I like value, so I'm always waiting for my guys. Yeah, this messes me up when I'm drafting against friends who've like looked at my own draft boards because I put out my rankings, and then I'm like, my sneaky play is I'm gonna wait an extra round, and they always get taken because my draft rankings are like public, and my opposition is reading it. So a lot of times they don't drop to me as sneakily as I hope.
A couple other picks I want to ask you about. And then we could wrap it up, and I'm looking forward to another podcast this week when we have a couple more drafts. But I already know where you're gonna comment on this, but this is a 20-round draft, okay, with a 10 deep bench. People always say screw kicker, screw defense, but I think if there are kickers and defenses that are elite, they're worth reaching a little bit for, especially after you have your foundation laid in. I was the first team to take a kicker in round 13 of a 20-round draft. The next kicker, I took Steven Gostkowski. The next kicker didn't go off the board until the middle of round 15. And then after that, it was round 18. So what do you think about me reaching for Steven Gostkowski, who has been a top 5 kicker the last 6 years? It's money in the bank. He's got a week 11 bye. You just plug him in there. You don't have to think about bidding my auction dollars on the waiver wire. Start with that.
I'm okay. I'm not super on board with a kicker in that round 13. I think it was too soon. I think you could have waited 2 more rounds. And I personally would play the game of chicken where I would have waited for, let's say, a Gostkowski to get taken, and then, been prompted maybe to consider Zuerlein. So I would have been okay with waiting another round or two. I'm looking around at who was taken in that area to get a sense of, like, let's see, this is going that way. So after Gostkowski comes off the board, and I don't want to talk...
Rivers went, and then the other guy I was considering there was James Washington. I was considering taking another one of the Rivers as a backup QB to Brady, but then I said I'll just wait. I even considered LeGarrette Blount just in case I need to put in like a bye week running back there. So I didn't love those options. I thought there was risk, whereas Gostkowski is going to be in my starting lineup every week. And even though it was early, I just wanted someone I could plug and play in there.
Yeah,
So.
and it's tough to say that's early because that would be where you were taking him was really the traditional last pick of a normal draft. Or it was right around where a normal person's draft would be ending. I mean, were there some players, Cam Meredith, I liked him as a prospect. Josh Doxson that went after him. John Brown, interesting prospect. Maybe some handcuffs for Fournette and McCaffrey could have been taken in this area. So maybe like, a T.J. Yeldon as a really ugly handcuff for Leonard Fournette. So there were some other ways you could have went there. But actually, Yeldon was already off the board. How do you like that? So
yeah, no. Yeldon's getting drafted now. He's going to have some standalone value. I think for sure that they are just going to run the Jaguars. All right, so you could understand, even though you wouldn't personally do the Gostkowski thing early.
Particularly, I almost mind the Rams pick less than the kicker because after there are 3 kickers that I consider draftable, elite. And Gostkowski is one of them, but you've got Tucker and Zerline, who are the other 2. And I'm just going to play that game of chicken. I don't want to be the first one. I'm going to say, oh shit, they're going. All right, let me grab Legatron. All right, it's time.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't want to initiate it. There were a couple of things like that initiation that was just like, all right, let's get it started. Let's start taking kickers. And I'm not going to initiate that. I'm going to say, all right, if it's happening, I'll get on board.
All right. The last thing I want to ask you about before we wrap it up is everyone in a 20 round draft where you have 10 bench spots, people take backup QBs. In most 12-team leagues where you have 6 bench spots, Kevin and I both don't advise taking a backup QB. We would rather have a wide receiver or running back at that last roster spot, but people still do it in your home league. I just waited to the second to last round, round 19, and I took Lamar Jackson. And I'll tell you why. Brady has got a week 11 bye. I'm thinking that Lamar Jackson, there is a chance that he takes the job, but I don't think it'll be until the Ravens bye. I don't anticipate the Ravens being that good, and if they are good, it's certainly not going to be because of Flacco. I can see a situation where Lamar Jackson gets his opportunity in week 11. The same week Brady has his bye. What do you think about that?
Listen, it's a dice roll. It could happen, but I'm not anticipating that Flacco's going to be benched this year. So I don't think Lamar Jackson. I think the most likely scenario is that Lamar Jackson doesn't play this year. Now, is it possible? Sure, anything's possible. I think you'd have a higher chance of getting Baker Mayfield as a starter.
Yeah, he went a couple picks after.
I think, if I had to grab one of the guys who's not scheduled to be a starter now, I think Mayfield has a higher likelihood, especially since the guy ahead of him is going to be scrambling, going to be nervous, going to be running maybe more than he needs to, going to get himself hurt. So,
all right, well, who do you think has the higher ceiling? Lamar Jackson or Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about the style of play that Lamar Jackson brings to the table as a rookie quarterback with the running style. So that's always going to be more interesting for me, particularly when it's a rookie.
And then, totally. And then you don't anticipate Brady getting hurt. And if he does, you're
in trouble. If Brady gets hurt, you're in trouble.
Well, you know what? There's still a few guys I can pluck off the waiver wire.
Is
in this
Darnold
league.
Available? You know what I mean? Like, did he not get drafted?
Jameis Winston's on the waiver wire, and so is Case Keenum, and so is Tyrod Tannehill.
Oh, okay. So all right. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. So you could. Yeah. There are guys you could pick up. At that point, this is all meaningless anyway. As long as you could see with a league this deep that there are no quarterbacks left, and if that happens, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, if I saw that happening, I probably would have gone around earlier for Case Keenum. But I saw how the room was going, and in a league, it's not like best ball where your team is your team. Here, I could bid dollars, and maybe I'll bid a few extra bucks on Jameis Winston 2 weeks before he comes back.
I don't know about Winston, but I think Case Keenum shouldn't be available. I think he's going to be good. So,
all right, let's wrap it up here and then we'll talk some more drafts as we see them come through.
Absolutely. So there you have it. A little bit of draft strategy. Always fun to talk about it as we're getting closer to real-time drafts. Big money on the line. We're starting to see where rankings meet actual draft situations, And specifically, again, with this board, I think the most fascinating aspect is just seeing how some of these people willing to put reasonably large money on their entries are really sticking to their guns and kind of going off script a little bit with how they approach the draft. Even that whack job who's just said, "Hey, I'm going to make sure I get Rodgers and whoever his running back is."
I mean, how excited are you, man? This was my first real season-long draft. I've done a million best balls, but my juices were flowing, man. You and I have a draft on Wednesday, a high money league.
We do?
That's Superflex. Yeah, dude, it's this Wednesday. It's August 22nd at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Don't forget.
Juicy.
I'm excited. I'm excited for real drafting. Like, I'm 35 best ball drafts complete. So I feel like, I'm ready. I've got money on the line drafts going constantly. Yeah, I'm excited to start drafting some real teams. Absolutely. So this Wednesday, just remind me Wednesday at some point because I will forget.
Well, you want to be, you know what? You have to auto draft them. Sorry. If you don't remember, I'm telling you now. And it's on tape.
I will ruin that league with an auto draft.
No, you'll ruin yourself. You'll pay. This is a $200 entry fee, so you'll ruin yourself.
There we go. Just remind me. I always forget. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to really start drafting this year. Like I said, I'm daily fantasy football is my thing. It's all encompassing. But part of what I dedicated myself to, and part of why this pod is happening, part of why we've done this, is I want to get back. I wanted this year to sort of to get back to the roots that got me into fantasy in the first place, which was my love and passion for season-long fantasy football leagues. I still love it. I still think they're awesome. It's a great camaraderie. It's a thing where you can really get an advantage and you can win them. You know what I'm saying? This is very winnable. So
is it fair to say, even though you enjoy it and it's a hobby, that daily fantasy is more of an investment for you at this point? You're so good at it, and you figured out the chess-like strategy of it, that it really is turned into a hobby where it's become a profit center for you and your followers. But whereas season long is still more of a communal sort of social thing for you. Would that be fair to say at this point?
Yeah, season long is more for fun. It's camaraderie. It's being in a league with other people. It's talking shit with them and that kind of thing. There's none of that going on in daily. We have that going on in DFS Army where we all enjoy this is our social aspect, which is great. But the actual game itself, no, you don't care who your opponent is in daily fantasy. And in season long, we have a lot of smack talking and other fun things that go on. So yeah, it's a total different thing. It's not a money-making venture for me. I like to win stuff, but in daily fantasy, when I win leagues, I buy stuff. I don't. There's big trophy. There's no bigger shit talker and smack talker than you and I. And so I would like for you to put up a Slack channel for me where your listeners, your subscribers could really give it back to me, because that's what fires me up. There we go. I think we have one going. I think there's a Says channel. So get into Slack and check it out, guys. And DFS Army guys, yeah. If you have season-long questions, hit up Season Long Says. He's got a channel in our Slack group, I believe, or we will have one up for him shortly. There we go. All right, we'll wrap up another bowl called Season Long Fantasy Football Podcast. Alan, Season Long Says, at Alan Seslowski on Twitter, at Season Long Says in DFS Army Slack. Thank you for joining me on this one. Good luck with this draft. Tom Brady, gonna need it.
Tom Brady to Chris Hogan. Let's go.
I love Hogan there. Very good value. Very good value. Good stuff. Good draft, and we'll be back again with another one of these shortly.
Peace and love, my brother.
Thank you for listening to the DFS Army podcast. Join the DFS Army today and gain access to our private Slack chat, where you can chat with real DFS pros and coaches, as well as other DFS Army members with winning track records. Also included in your membership is access to our premium articles, DFS Army weighted projections for every sport we offer, from NFL to MMA, weekly player picks and cheat sheets, the strategy vault of timeless concepts, and the DFS Army Domination Station, a truly state-of-the-art lineup optimizer, offering your personal projections or ours. The DFS Army membership is the best value across the industry. Join today and get 2 free ebooks, as well as the secrets to unlocking a new level to your game.